Ever feel like you're kind of like captain of your own ship, charting the course of your life? Or does it ever feel like you're just along for the ride, getting tossed around by whatever waves come your way?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all relate to that feeling sometimes.
Totally. And that, my friend, is the heart of what we're diving into today, locus of control. And you've sent over some really interesting material on it too.
It's a fascinating concept, really. Gets at how much we believe we can actually influence things in our lives.
Deeply. And I think what's so cool about the stuff you sent is how it brings in a personal angle.
Right. A personal story can really help bring this whole idea to life.
Hmm.
It's not just some abstract psychobabble. It's real.
100%. So it's not like we can just flip a switch and suddenly, bam, we have an internal locus of control, right?
Right. It's definitely more of a spectrum, I'd say.
Makes sense.
So on one end, you've got folks who lean heavily on that internal locus of control. They see that connection, that direct link between what they do and the outcomes. It's not about pretending external things don't matter, but it's more about recognizing your own power to act no matter what's going on around you.
Okay, so to make that a bit more concrete, let's say someone aces their driver's test, right? Someone with a strong internal locus of control would probably chalk that up to all that practice they put in, studying the rules of the road, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They own that success. And what's really interesting is that the source material we're looking at today actually dives into this idea. They share a story, a pretty incredible one, actually about someone who was juggling, like multiple areas of study while working crazy long hours, like really intense.
Whoa, talk about dedication.
Right. And the thing that really struck me was their unwavering belief that if they put in the effort, the results would follow. They just had this deep-seated conviction in that.
Wow, they're really living that effort equals outcome mentality, huh?
Totally. They even described themselves as being stubborn in going after what they wanted. And this wasn't about being delusional or anything. They weren't blind to the challenges. But at their core, they believed they could shape their circumstances through sheer grit and hard work.
That's so inspiring, honestly. But what about those times when, things really do feel outside our control? Our source talks about that side of it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, understanding this whole spectrum idea becomes super important.
Yeah.
Because even someone with a really strong internal locus of control can totally recognize that, hey, some things, you just can't control them, no matter how much you might want to.
Right.
Like to think about things like the weather or, what's happening with the economy on a global scale. Even other people's actions, to some extent.
Yeah.
We can't control those things no matter how hard we try.
So it's not about pretending we've got this total control over everything, but more about recognizing where does our control actually lie, within each situation.
Exactly. And that's kind of where the potential downsides, the pitfalls, I guess, of an overly external locus of control come in. If we're constantly stuck in that belief that we're like just passive recipients of whatever life throws our way, that can lead to this feeling of learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. That's always been such an interesting concept to me. Can we dig into that a little bit? I feel like it's super relevant here.
For sure. For sure. So imagine this. You basically feel like giving up on something because deep down you truly believe that your actions won't change the outcome, even if they actually could. That's like learned helplessness in action right there.
Wow.
And our source uses this like really powerful analogy to illustrate it. Have you ever heard of that experiment with the dogs in cages?
Vaguely. It rings a bell, but I'd love for you to, break it down.
Totally. So researchers, they trained these dogs to associate a bell with getting food. So, a good thing. But then they added in a negative element. They started pairing the bell with a mild electric shock. So now the dogs are scared of the bell. And eventually, get this, even when the cage door was left open so they could clearly escape, the dogs wouldn't even try when the bell rang. They just kind of give up.
Oh.
They learned to be helpless.
That's both kind of sad, but also like really eye-opening. It makes you realize how this kind of thinking can really take root and trap us in a cycle of inaction.
Exactly. And it's not just about dogs, right? This experiment helps psychologists understand how people, too, can get stuck in that mindset, believing they don't have any control over their situations, even when they actually might.
So how do we break free from that? Like, especially if we find ourselves relating more to that external locus of control side of things.
That is the question, isn't it? And that's where I think the source material offers some really, really valuable insights.
It really is. Because, okay, it's one thing to, get the concept right, but how do we actually use this whole locus of control thing to actually make positive changes? Like, how do we put it into practice?
Right, right. Well, what our source really emphasizes is that, yeah, there are absolutely things we can't control, but there's also a lot that we can, probably more than we realize a lot of the time.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
And it starts with kind of recognizing those areas where we do have that agency, like taking ownership of our choices and actions within those specific areas.
So it's kind of like circling back to that dog in the cage analogy. Even if we sometimes feel trapped, we always have the power to choose how we react to that bell.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
100%. And that's where, like, really cultivating that more internal locus of control can be so empowering, I think. And again, it's not about pretending external factors don't exist. It's more about being intentional with where we focus our energy.
Right.
What aspects of a situation can we actually impact?
Yeah, that totally reminds me of that quote. I don't know who said it originally, but it's something like, the only thing we can control is how we react to what happens to us.
Yes. Such a good one. And our source actually talks about that too. They emphasize how an internal locus of control isn't just some fluffy, like positive thinking exercise. Yeah. It's really about understanding that link between effort and outcomes. They actually say that when we really truly believe that our efforts can make a difference, that's when we're going to be more likely to push through challenges, to set those big, ambitious goals, and then actually achieve them.
Makes total sense. It's about recognizing that we're not just along for the ride, We're active participants in shaping our own lives.
Right. And this isn't just about like these huge life accomplishments either. This applies to the everyday stuff too. How we manage stress, how we deal with those little daily annoyances.
Oh, for sure.
Like, think about it. When something goes wrong, someone with a more external locus of control, they might immediately jump to blaming outside factors. Right. And that can really feed into that feeling of being helpless, being anxious. But if we can shift to a more internal perspective, we can start asking ourselves, okay, what is in my control to change here? What can I do about this, even if it's something small?
Right, right. Even if we can't control the whole situation, we can control how we respond to it. And honestly, that can make all the difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Wow.
I'm feeling super energized after this deep dive, even as the expert. Haha. It's a good reminder that understanding our own locus of control is such a powerful tool for growth, for resilience, all of it.
Totally agree. It's been super insightful. So if you had to leave our listeners with like one key takeaway from all of this, what would it be?
Okay. The next time you face a challenge, big or small, take a second. Just pause and ask yourself, what aspects of this situation can I actually influence? What do I have the power to change? You might be surprised by the answer, because even those small shifts in perspective, they can really create these ripple effects in our lives.
Love that. Such a good reminder to end on. Thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, everyone.